It's Bourbon Night. Hello, I'm Chad.
I'm Sarah.
Sarah, we have a familiar looking bottle, although it's different. What do we got?
We have Old Forester 1924. That's a whiskey. It's a Whiskey Row bottle, but it's a new one.
It is. I could have sworn when 1910 came out, they said this is the fourth and final bottle of the Whiskey Row series.
Well, it's like in the Fast and the Furious movies when they're like, and this is the no, I don't know if they ever say this is the last one, but everyone thinks surely this is the last one.
They couldn't come out with a Fast 10.
And in no way am I hating on them.
No.
Whatever brings you joy makes me happy.
A 10-year, 100 proof, age stated.
I like the 10-year age statement.
New edition from Old Forester brings me joy.
We're big fans of the 1920. I also, am partial to the 1910, which
come around on
you have come around to it. I just think in general it's a good lineup. It's a solid series that they do. But this was an unexpected addition.
It was also a little expected, unexpected price. So, usually the other four in the line are between $50 and $60. Mm-hmm. This did not come in at that price. $115 is the suggested retail price. Mm-hmm. Although, we'll just go ahead and say I did a little look on the old interwebs before this. I saw it for $300 up to $400.
No, come on, y'all.
Come on, yeah.
It's a once-a-year release, though. Is that right?
It is. It's going to be a once-a-year revolving release.
So that is how it differs from the rest of the Whiskey Row series, which is, generally available always on the shelf. That price does stack up with what we have been generally experienced with limited releases, and if we're going $10 per year, that would be about $100.
So we first tried this at our local Justin's House of Bourbon. They had it on the tasting bar, and there was about maybe 3 to 4 ounces left in the bottle, and we said, yes, we'll have a pour of that. I then, after we were able to find a bottle, tried it myself, and I was not as impressed
as you were when we tried it at Justin's.
On the fresh crack as we were at Justin's.
Okay.
So to hopefully alleviate that, I poured about 3 or 4 ounces into a bottle, and I've been letting it sit here for a while, so I want to kind of try that against this later as a little bit of a science experiment.
Okay.
Right? Fruit?
Yeah. I don't get the traditional, like when you think about Old Forester, and a lot of people will say like that banana note. I don't get that.
Well, Sarah, that could also be because this is not a typical Old Forester mash bill.
Oh,
this is actually the old Early Times or current King of Kentucky mash bill.
That's interesting.
More on that later. But the marketing speak behind this bottle is back in Prohibition, over 200 distilleries had to close due to Prohibition. And Old Forester was one of 6 distilleries that was able to continue operating.
Yeah, the medicinal license, right?
Exactly, the medicinal license. They say during that time, they bought a bunch of shuttered distilleries' stocks. Of course, those are different mash bills. And then they bottled them and sold them as Old Forester. So this is commemorating them passing off product that wasn't theirs as
100 years later. We're
it's kind of weird.
I guess it's part of their history, and so they're celebrating through the Whiskey Row series significant moments in history. I don't know that we necessarily are celebrating the purchase and then distribution of things that are not theirs.
That's what they said. That's how it read.
I think it let me call their ad people.
Imagine it's 1924 and you go and buy your favorite bottle of Old Forester and you taste it and you're like, this doesn't taste normal because it's someone else's stuff.
That doesn't mean it's bad.
Doesn't mean it's bad.
No, and I'm sure they had some sort of quality assurance, but...
I suppose, yeah.
But, it seems like an interesting thing to commemorate with a new release. But maybe, again, it's just an element of their history, and the Whiskey Row series celebrates moments in history.
It's definitely history.
It is Prohibition. It is something that happened during Prohibition.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you what, this knows. That it's like creme brulee and oak, and I am into it.
A little bit of sugary syrup.
Gosh, that's really most of what I'm getting, but I like it. Just like complex oak notes and those toasted sugars.
Little bit of dark honey too.
Dark honey, not regular honey. Dark honey. That honey has been through some stuff.
It's seen some things. All right. To your health. Okay. This is better than when I had it the other night.
I do enjoy. I do.
Is it that same magic from the bottle of Justin's?
I think so.
Okay.
I think it has a really nice texture to it. Again, I get that like creme brulee topping sugar and a little bit of that like custardiness, but mostly just topping and oak and just like really rich oak, and it's nice and pleasant. And 100 proof, you know, I'm still getting a little warmth, but to keep all that flavor, I'm enjoying it.
It's a really good mouthfeel. I think it's very viscous. I'm getting that sugary honeyness, very coating, the berries, sort of stone fruitish, almost more like in a Buffalo Trace type of berry type of way. Definitely not in the typical Old Forester. Again, this isn't exactly their mash bill. So the Early Times mash bill, the mash bill that's in here, which is also interesting because in their press release they said to celebrate this, they have created a new mash bill. It's not. They didn't really create it. It's just a different mash bill.
It's a different mash bill.
Yeah. So
that was selected.
That's a little shady. If you ask me.
Well, shady. Yes, we should edit the language.
Yes.
If I was their legal team, I would circle that and say, is this true? You know?
Right, yeah.
Like claims wise, is this actually true? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't work for them.
But the Early Times / King of Kentucky mash bill is 79% corn, 11% rye, and 10% malted barley, compared to the Old Forester mash bill, which isn't all that different. It's 72% corn, 18% rye, and 10% malted barley.
So a little more rye. Honestly, this is giving me, like, at 10 years old, I'm getting more oak than I would expect. And again, at also 100 proof, it's giving more oak than 10 years, which I'm impressed by.
Very.
It's getting close to my oak threshold.
Oh,
not quite there.
Okay.
We're in safe territory still, but
good.
You know, in the box and whisker chart, we're still in the box.
Humbly.
But we're just at one end of the box. It's not a whisker.
Very good.
You know, in case you were wondering.
They were wondering. Well, before we go in for our second sip, we want to hit pause and tell you about our home on the internet. It's whiskyambitions.com. It's where you can get the t-shirt that I'm wearing, of course, the Glencairns that we're both drinking from, hats, hoodies, sweatshirts, our water glasses, bottle cut candles, our new elemental elixir cocktail syrup for amazing old fashioned, and more always coming soon at whiskyambitions.com.
And you can become a patron at patreon.com/itsbourbonnight and join our community for as little as $1 a month. And we just did a Knob Creek bourbon and Sagamore rye release for our barrel pick program. The Sagamore rye is still available, and we will have it linked down below in the description if you're so interested. Typically, though, those don't make it outside of Patreon.
That is correct.
We just happen to have a super high yield on this one. But that is where you can also get after the episode exclusives, discounts on that merch, and more.
Okay, and we'll be right back. And our second sip.
I mean, I took mine before the break, but that's fine.
# second sip Sarah.
Very enjoyable. I like it a lot.
Yeah.
You were talking about the connection with like the Early Times mash bill and King of Kentucky, and I could totally see this being like not a stepping stone, but they're cousins, right? It's not quite that big, bold King of Kentucky, but it has the oak and it has some punch.
Well, there's a couple ways you could look at this. You could look at this as an older Early Times bottled and bond, even though this isn't bottled and bond. It doesn't follow those rules, but it is
100
proof, so the proofs do match. Or you could look at it as a younger 100 proof King of Kentucky, which I think would get a lot of people excited, right?
I do think this would be for the person who, like, if you're chasing King of Kentucky but you couldn't find it, and you still got that chunk of change if you want to spend it.
The runner-up price?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's as good, I'm just saying, like, they're related.
So there was, as I was sort of doing a little research on this, make sure I had all my facts straight, I came across an article from Bourbon Culture. We'll link that in the description down below. You should go read it. I don't want to spoil it, but I am going to speak on it a little bit, just to kind of maybe entice you. So Bourbon Culture has a theory here that the sale of Early Times to the Sazerac Company, which happened back in 2020, really those wheels got turning around 2017, 2018.
I mean, as they do when you sell a giant brand, I'm sure.
As they do, yes. But here's the thing. People might be saying, well, they sold that. They can't still make Early Times. Well, they're not.
They're not making, quote, they wouldn't use
Times.
the name Early Times,
Right.
but the mash bill isn't.
Yeah, you can't.
Unless it's patented.
You can't copyright a mash bill.
Right.
So they're still continuing to use it. Plus, they're still making King of Kentucky, right?
Right.
So kind of the theory, and there's more in the article, so again, go read the article. But that, the master taster who picks barrels for King of Kentucky, they're only picking the select few, the best. And those are, around 12, 14, older
Those
years of age.
exceptional barrels.
So kind of their going theory with it is around age 10, you can sort of tell if the barrel is on the trajectory to become exceptional in a few more years or not. So these are basically...
Pass inspection, doesn't pass inspection.
Right.
Yeah.
These are basically the column reject barrels.
I think
just didn't quite pass the bar.
Well, you need a large sample size to find your exceptionals to go into the King of Kentucky pool.
Yeah.
But what do you do with the rest of it? I mean, it's not like it's bad.
Right. So you could either blend it away into a much lower price product of theirs, or you could create a new product. Again, going back to me swearing that when 1910 came out, they said this is our fourth and final Whiskey Row series.
But then they were like, well, we can't release this as anything, like we can't put it under the Early Times label
because they don't own it anymore.
Because they don't own it anymore, and we're not putting it into King of Kentucky, so we could blend it into something else. Like I think you mentioned Cooper's Craft when we were talking about this earlier. But when you have a 10-year product, why would you do that if you could leave it be as a 10-year product? And it's an interesting theory. I mean, again, this is all speculation and we don't know. But coming from this article, I think that makes a lot of sense. Why would you not want to capitalize on that, or celebrate the stuff that's left that's actually still really good?
They could have called it King of Kentucky Jr.
This is kind of interesting because it a little bit strengthens our idea that the story behind this one's a little, I don't want to call it flimsy.
It's a little weak.
It feels like a bit of a stretch, but it almost seems like what can we find that makes this relevant?
Correct. It's interesting. Go read the article.
Overall, I think it's very good. I think the question is whether or not you think it's worth the $115 MSRP. I like this, on par with some of the Old Fitzgeralds that we've had that, around that 9-year mark.
Yeah, much different flavor profile, but yeah,
totally
I get
different,
what you're saying.
I'm saying another, limited release bottle, same proof. Again, that one's also bottled and bond, so it's not quite, but roughly the same age, roughly the same price. You're getting a much fancier bottle with the Old Fitz, but
I'm sure, someone's going to ask, how does it compare to Early Times Bottle and Bond? This is far and away better than that.
Agreed.
How is it compared to King of Kentucky? It can't because it's not barrel proof.
The proof would be unfair.
But I feel like the age and the oak that I get in some King of Kentucky is reflected in here, just at a lower proof. So I would say this is much more akin to King of Kentucky than it is Early Times Bottled and Bond.
I would agree with that.
For $115, I am going to recommend it. I think this is unique enough of a tasting experience. If you've had a King of Kentucky and loved it, or have always wanted a King of Kentucky, King of Kentucky Jr. over here.
Yeah,
is what I would call it.
If you wanted to go in and see if you even like that direction that bottle's going in, this would be a good place to start.
I would recommend this.
I guess I would say if I had personally walked out of the house today, had $115 in my pocket to spend on a bottle, would I spend it on this one? I would.
Okay.
I enjoy it.
I was on the edge of my seat there.
I would do it. I enjoy it. I'm not suggesting that you do that. I know this is not in everyone's budget, but I do enjoy it. I think it's great.
This is one where, when it's gone, I feel like I'm going to be looking for another bottle. I'd always like to have one of these on hand, to drink and to pour for friends as well.
I find myself, I've drained my glass, and I think, we'll do another round for Patreon after this. I would like to put this up next to the Old Forester 1920, which is not age-stated, but is 115 proof. What else could we put it next to?
Old Forester Birthday Bourbon, because those are age-stated.
And lower proof. And I think when you think about that, this bottle at $115 versus Old Forester Birthday Bourbon, which is even harder to find than this one, I think.
And higher price. Yes.
So if you're like, Birthday Bourbon, can't find it, could this be your
I think there was a year where
consolation?
The Birthday Bourbon was 10 years. And I think there is one that's 103 proof.
They
I don't
did
know
one that
if
was
those,
101.
Yeah, 101. I don't know if those coincide or not, but we try to find one that we have. Or maybe we should get the one that's also purple.
No, that has nothing to do with anything.
Okay, to end, I poured some of this that we put in a bottle that had a lot of air to see if that whole, oxidation neck pour versus last pour makes a difference or not.
It's very unofficial science.
Smells the same.
Smells the same. Maybe slightly more airy. I don't want to say the lighter.
For some reason, it's oakier and drier.
I agree with that assessment.
It's kind of did the opposite. I was expecting it to be more like we had that first pour at Justin's, which was more luscious and rich and...
I still feel that way about this one.
I do too, in this bottle.
Yeah, that vessel, it's too much oxidation.
Maybe.
But that's weird because it wasn't even in there for very long. Experiment failed, question mark?
But I do feel like there is a noticeable taste.
There's a little bit of a difference, yeah.
Well, that debate rages on. Can't solve that one today.
No answers today.
Yeah, that's right.
Come back, an 8 ball. Come back again tomorrow.
Ask again later. Hey, if you haven't subscribed to us already, you can do so by clicking right up here. There's suggestions of other videos down here, and we hope to see you over there in one of those. Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks, Chad.
Okay, see you next time. Until then, drink more bourbon.